caught up in the false notion that it is about the morality of things, when it's really about taking away other people's liberties to access. So I have a favorite. Can I tell about my favorite? I was in Tomball, Texas. I was a librarian there, and I was called to the desk. I was the manager who had to deal with the raging patron who was very upset about this children's picture book that we had in our collection. And so I did what I normally did, and I got my form, because sometimes the form can be a method of diffusing the vitriol. And so I said, thank you for coming into the library today. Here is the form. Please begin to fill it out. And I think she got through name and maybe phone number, and then just started really very upset about this awful book that we had, the children's library. How can we do this? We were teaching children about elder abuse and just how to be awful children. And really what it was a picture book that explained long vowel sounds. And the title was The Geezer in the Freezer. It took everything in my body, my heart and my soul, to not fall out laughing because she was incredibly serious. And so that just to me was this pivotal moment of, wow, this is as low as the bar can go for what should be banned. And I just kind of remind myself of that was somebody's very real benchmark of what we shouldn't have in the library. But I will also say though, and I would challenge the fact that we cannot fall victim to the Bay Area bubble phenomena either. At San Lorenzo Library, we did a drag story hour, and we were confronted with the Proud Boys from California. We were tracked by the Moms of Liberty and the Libs of TikTok. We were called pedophiles and groomers, and we had our videos all over social media. And so it happens here too. So there's similarities that I can see. If there's a righteous indignation in one place, it also exists here. And it exists in all political spectrums. So my challenge to you, or my ask to you, is to make sure that you advocate that libraries are places to complicate conversation, to connect, explore, and to learn. And those are the most important things that we can offer. It's for you, right? She knew.
So let's talk about this idea of this chilling effect that this can have, and sort of this idea of like soft censorship. Have you seen some of this happen in our school libraries?
Yes. So I think that, to me, I mean, definitely the physical removal of books is a terrifying thing, but I think, to me, the concept of not even putting those books on the shelves in the first place because we're so afraid of what might happen is even more scary. How do you confront something that you can't even see because it's happening behind the scenes? So that is a conversation that we have a lot amongst our team. How do we make sure that we are continuing to have our LGBTQ books visible, even if a school board member's how do we make sure that we're not intentionally kind of hiding those books away, locking those books behind the three locks, as they describe those stories that are just so important to be out there. Recently, we had an incident where some authors who had written this really beautiful book about book banning for children were invited to speak at some of our elementary schools and talk to 2 or 3 of those schools about the experience of writing the book and what the book was about and how they can be proactive young citizens of this great country. And by the time they got to the last school, some people had reported against the conversation that they were having, saying it was not appropriate, not age appropriate for elementary school students to hear. And to me was just terrifying. So they pulled these authors who were parents themselves, educators themselves, who definitely knew how to talk to young people about complicated issues, and asked them to change the tenor of their conversation. And very rightfully, they walked out. but the librarian, the library media specialist who'd organized that conversation, basically got put out in the limelight in terms of what she had chosen to do. She'd done everything correctly, had all of the information to the board ahead of time, and I can only imagine that that's probably the last time she puts herself out there like that, and that's frightening because that's a lesson lost, right, to these students.
Emily, we're going to come down to you. Thank you. So we know that book challenges are not new, but can you tell us, for here in Livermore, like how have those challenges changed over time? What are you seeing in the library?
Sure. I mean, I can speak to, I've been in this profession or in public libraries for 10 years, and certainly before, around 2021, 2022, it was a lot more organic, like Deb was sharing, and you know, you would get usually a parent who was offended by something and have a very real moment with you, and you would, you know, listen to them and walk them through the process of requesting the deselection. But 2021 moving forward, it was a lot more coordinated. So like, you know, anything in the era of social media, a lot more from out of town challenges, or like special interest groups where you could recognize books that were on lists. So, and I think I was listening, preparing for this, I was listening to an ALA interview, and I think during this time frame, the amount of book challenges eclipsed McCarthy era challenges. So it just, you know, exploded. And so, you know, I can say from experience that is something that we were noticing. Yeah, so it's definitely, and since the Freedom to Read Act, which is mentioned in here, I think New Jersey passed it in this film, and California also has. I do think it has built-in protections, one of which is in our collection development policy, we do require that anyone who is challenging a material does live in our community.
Yeah, and actually, Deb, I'd love for you, speaking of the Freedom to Read Act, this was recently passed in California. So Deb, can you tell us a little bit about that and why it's important?
Sure, it's AB 1825, it's the California Freedom to Read Act, but it protects us. It doesn't protect her. So people doing educational work needs to make sure that the school librarians are also protected into the California Freedom to Read Act. So that's a very important distinction. And one day I'm going to sit up here and with another thing with you, and we're going to have the school librarians in that act, because they really do put their hearts and souls on the line, and because of local parentis, they are often put into situations where they have to have, you know, a moral allegiance to one type of thinking. And so please support your school librarians, ensure that they can get into this act. It's really important that we legislate protections for them as well.
So, Deb, will stay with you just for a second. So, this Freedom to Read Act and thinking about books that or material content that might challenge us. What is something that you've read that has challenged you or made you feel uncomfortable, and what was that experience like for you?
Leviticus. I jest, but and it's really what I do now in reading is I see it as just information, not something that I'm just intaking information. So I don't really get too offended too much. But there is a particular news channel that I do a personal test, litmus test of my tolerance on. And I call it the 5-minute challenge to see if I can listen to this particular news channel for 5 minutes. And I do fail miserably at that.
How long do you last?
Usually about 2.5, depending on the day. So I can see, though, what it does remind me of the fact that this exists, and it exists for other people in this world, and that is their truth. And it is not my truth, but the fact that it exists, I will also defend. I disagree. I can go through a litany of research that dispels some of the information on there, but it is not my right to take away somebody else's ability to listen to that particular news channel.
Thank you. Emily, same question for you. So what is something that you've read that has challenged you or made you feel uncomfortable, and what was that experience like for you?
I wasn't prepared for what is something that I've read that's challenged me, but I'm sure there have been many things that I've read.
You're also welcome to share a story maybe about something in your library that other people have felt challenges them or makes them uncomfortable.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, to the point, I think in libraries, a good library will have something that offends everyone, you know? And so I think I had heard about in Germany, it wasn't necessarily banned. Actually, I was listening to the director of this film, and she was saying that German librarians were sharing with her how they didn't have it in their libraries. And it was mainly due to copyright and stuff for a while, and then it became available, I think, in 2015. And so, Mein Kampf is something we do have on our shelves, and I was talking to another manager who said that someone was complaining about another book, and he said it would be like having Mein Kampf on your shelf, and this library manager said, well, we do have it on our shelf. Case in point, like Deb is saying, if we're doing our jobs correctly, it is equally enforced. Everybody has freedom to this information and freedom of speech, and that is beautifully democratic and an American value we want to uphold.
Thanks. I'm going to ask you the same question.
And I've been sitting here thinking desperately, what? I mean, so many things, right?
Or your students, something that was maybe challenging for your students to read.
I guess what I would say is, I think such an important part of growth is confronting things that make us uncomfortable, helping us define what is it about, that makes, what is it about the material we're intaking, whether it's a particular news channel or whatever, that puts us in a place of discomfort. And I think it's really hard to grow if we don't identify that. So I have encountered many things. I know my students have encountered many things that have made them uncomfortable, and much like your 2.5 minutes, they can turn it off or close the book, right? I mean, if you get to a place where you're not able to continue on, it doesn't feel like it's something that is enriching your understanding of the world, it's okay for you to put it back on the shelf for somebody else to pick up. And I think that's the operative term. It's so important that somebody who needs that story or needs to define themselves in opposition of that story gets to have access to it.
And I know one of the things that you do is you craft lessons for students, specifically to kind of get them to stretch and grow. And so tell us a little bit about that experience.
We teach all sorts of things, but one of our favorite weeks in usually late September, early October is the Freedom to Read week, and we have a really delightful set of lessons that we get to work with students. Some of them look at some of the statistics you were describing, kind of the super growth of these book bans in the last few years, many author perspectives. Jason Reynolds has a really wonderful piece from the ALA when he was the ambassador for Freedom to Read, typically show something like that. And usually it's a set of critical thinking questions for our students to engage with. And one thing that's always interesting to me when our students are deciding when is it okay to take books out of the library, when it comes to them and what they want access to, they don't ever want books removed from the library. But when we ask them about their younger siblings or those who are in elementary school, well, not those kids. Those kids need to be protected at all costs. And it's an interesting point of growth, I think, and something that we really have to get them to think about and work through, that obviously we're not going to put some of the books that we have in our high school library in our elementary school library, but we are also going to make sure that our elementary school students have access to books that are going to help them grow in a great way.
So since you work with young people, can you tell us something that gives you hope in that work?
I mean, they're wonderful. they're open to ideas. They are excited to become invested citizens of the world. I think they are so much more open to controversy than I think we give them credit for, and to experiencing and empathizing with other members of their community, and I just think that's a wonderful thing to experience.
We're going to go down to Emily. So we have a room full of people here who are maybe really eager to support public libraries. So what can they do? Like, what do you suggest people do in order to support libraries?
Sure. Show up to film screenings like this. Yay. You guys have already, you're on your way. But one of the things that I tell people who are concerned about book banning is it's really, really important that you check out banned books. Deselection is actually a routine part of what we do. We have limited shelf space, so to maintain a collection, we're going to have to remove items and add items, right? If one of the ways we measure what should be removed is like what's not resonating with our community, what is not popular. So some of these banned books, you can absolutely help by checking them out. Because circulation stats do inform those decisions. So that's one just very real way that you can support public libraries. And then just, speak up. I love the example in the film of the gentleman who went and spoke up for the librarian, the school media specialist who was fired, and that was so moving.
Deb, I'm going to ask you the same question. What can we do? What is an action item that we can do to support libraries?
I'm going to so embarrass one of my amazing staff crew here. But if Helen would stand up. If you did not meet the Heart Helen. Helen is the chair of the Merit Fund. And the Merit Fund is, and some of the librarians that were in this movie have benefited from the Merit Fund, but it is a way to raise money for librarians that have been affected by refusal to censor and help them get through their monthly bills. People almost lost their houses in all of this to pay their mortgage. Just legal fees and all kinds of other support. So if you take your phone out and QR code her, that is one direct action you can take right now.
Excellent. Wonderful. Any other thoughts that you had that you just want? What do you want us to walk away with tonight?
I think one thing that I walked away with from this film is just the power of reflection and the power of speaking up for marginalized communities. So seeing some of those very brave souls who went to school board meetings to speak on behalf of people who maybe don't feel comfortable to speak for themselves, I think is a huge thing that is for our community. And also just on a small scale. I'm a parent. I know that it's sometimes hard to disentangle my concern for my own child and what terrible things maybe are not out there in the world and what I perceive might be a threat to him. But I think allowing him to go through the growth that is necessary by exposing him to different ideas, I think is so important. I think that can be really hard when you're in it and in the trenches. So whether it's your children or your grandchildren, they are coming across material that feels uncomfortable for you, keeping an open mind.
Thank you. Yeah, wonderful. So it sounds like everyone has some action items for you to go out and do. Check out some diverse books from the library. Show up to a school board meeting. And support our programming, our librarians, and be out there, be vocal in the community to support access for not just your family, but for all of our families. So thank you so much to our panelists. Let's give a round of applause.